The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your qualified health provider with any questions you may have. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. Reliance on any information provided here is solely at your own risk.
Welcome. This is Birth, Baby. Your hosts are Ciarra Morgan and Samantha Kelly. Ciarra is a birth doula, hypnobirthing educator, and pediatric sleep consultant.
Samantha is a birth doula, childbirth educator, and lactation counselor. Join us as we guide you through your options for your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Thank you to our listeners for your continued support. If you enjoy our content, please be sure to like, follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. This helps us gain visibility to other people that could benefit from listening in. Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to talk about doula trainings and how to pick one. And we have a special guest. Her name is Allison Coleman. She is mom to 4 fabulous, now grown people, and she runs an active postpartum doula agency here in Austin, Texas, and works as an independent birth and postpartum doula in Asheville, North Carolina. She also runs a well-respected postpartum doula certification program called ABG Postpartum Doula Certification. And I will tell you, as a birth doula agency owner and postpartum doula agency owner, I love when people have taken her training and come and work for me. That's kind of all I want, working for me. So thank you so much for being here today, Allison.
I love that about you. And I think it's worth noting also that you are enrolled in the program so that you can see what the doulas are learning before you encourage people to come and join the certification program. And I think that says a lot, that you invested into that in order to, to see what you were getting out of it.
Yeah. And I started because I had one of your people who graduated from your program working for me. And I was like, man, she's good. And then I would have other people reach out and I'm like, they don't seem as good. And I was like, there's something to this training program. And so I was like, I've got to see what it is. All right, I've got to buy this. I've got to see it. And I started doing the program myself, even though I'm like looking over at my stuff on the wall. I'm already a certified postpartum doula. I didn't have to do that, but I just wanted to. So sometimes people cross train. So let's talk a little bit today about how people choose a birth or a postpartum doula certifying or training academy or agency or whatever they want to call themselves. So what is your first, takeaway for people?
My first thing is, if you're interested in postpartum doula training, you've probably met somebody who does it, or you have a friend who does it, or you've helped somebody when they've had a new baby and realized, oh, that fits for me. So I always tell people, if you know anybody who is a postpartum doula, ask them who they trained with. Ask them what they thought about it. Ask them for their reviews of it. Same
with a birth doula training, it's so important to have other people that are referring to that and want to put their name behind it, because sometimes people are like, oh, this is who I trained with, but I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah. I've taken a lot of trainings myself. Long before I started training doulas, I had been through several different programs, and there are some that I learned what I don't want to do,
Yes.
And then there's some I've taken that I thought were great, but I just wanted to, have things go just my way.
We know that about you, Allison. People listening in might not know that. We know that you like things just your way, Allison.
I do like things just my way.
I will say to people listening, Allison is actually one of my mentors, and she was one of my mentors before I ever signed up for her training. This is just someone that I knew in the community from a local doula association where I was like, oh my goodness. And she is so incredible and has provided mentorship to so many people. So I say that lovingly, that we know Allison likes things a certain way.
I'm kind of a perfectionist. I can't help it. You mentioned bringing in doulas from other trainings. That's how I ended up developing my training program. I ran an agency and I would bring on other doulas. Well, before I even admitted that I was an agency, that was a big leap for me.
It's a weird shift.
It's total imposter syndrome stuff you have to deal with. But I would have doulas come work with me that had trained with really popular, well-known groups. And I'd find myself retraining them. And so I ended up developing my own training, and eventually a couple of the doulas that worked with me went off and started their own agency, totally with my approval and
Of course,
encouragement.
blessing, yeah.
And they, they would come to me and say, "Oh, my next door neighbor would be a fabulous doula. Will you train her?" And so I found myself doing it. And then I was like, okay, this is a thing. And so, I think it's why I do it,
Yeah.
because I really want doulas to be able to go out and support families in a fabulous way.
I have to say something funny. This is not what we're going to be talking about today, but it just goes to show that your program is very specific. It has a lot of detail to it. And that's why we made our birth doula training program. We wanted exactly that. We had people coming in working for our agency. They would start asking me questions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did their training not teach them this?
Well,
and
you see it on all the groups too.
Oh yeah, the questions they're asking, like, what do I do in a prenatal meeting? That's terrifying to me. If their training did not teach them that, or that they don't have an after thing that you can go back and look at. So like even when you take our in-person program, you get an online program that you can go back and refer to. Same with yours. It's updated all the time and you get access to the updated stuff. So that's another thing to look for, making sure that there's continuing.
How do you find a client? What do you do about a contract?
Yeah. So we just had a person reach out to us, and one of your past graduates is their doula. And I'll say her name. She's been on here before. Jess, she's the best. And I said, I just
like carbon copy her.
I could fill her schedule 6 times over for the whole year. So we had somebody, I was like just checking in on them after their first couple of nights with her, like, how are things going? And they were like, she's amazing. And our mom actually really just complimented her too. To me, they're so thankful that like she comes in and she really cares about our health. She always washes her hands right when she gets there. And I texted to Jess and she goes, Ciarra, that's all Allison. That is something that's so like ingrained in Allison stuff. You've got to let them see that you're doing these things.
Yes. Well, we talk about the fact that it's like, if you go to the bathroom, in a client's house, even though we all assume that you washed your hands, if you go to the bathroom in a client's house, open the bathroom door before you wash your hands. Because I have heard clients, or I've seen clients stand outside the door, like when they were interviewing a nanny. They stood outside the bathroom door and they came back
to listen.
I don't know if she washed her hands.
Oh no.
And so I was like, that is something that we've got to, because new parents, they're concerned. Yeah. And it's a valid concern. And you want to not have them have, these minor concerns that they shouldn't have to have.
Yeah. And I think that kind of brings us to my next point of when I'm talking about you were my mentor and all of that. Support and mentorship past when you train is really important. And there are different levels of that. So you, for the longest time, just give out so much of your information just included with that. You mentor everybody. But once a program gets big enough, it's a little bit difficult to do that at that same level. So some base question answering, is helpful. Even when you're looking for the program, when you reach out and you email them, are they emailing you back? Yes. How long did it take them to email you back? Because if they're not even working hard to reply quickly when you reach out, and trying to get your money, they as heck are not going to do that afterward. But also if there's an option for some sort of mentorship or follow-up guidance, that's really important too.
Right. Well, and like one of the things we have like throughout the training, in our training portal, there's places for people to ask questions.
Yeah.
And we go back in and answer them.
That's awesome.
There's a student and graduate group for people to go in and ask questions. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's me, but a lot of times it's people that took our training, 5 years ago, that they know they had those same questions and now they have the experience to answer that.
Yeah, that's something I love about I took a sleep consulting training and same thing. There's this online community.
Absolutely.
So even if it's not a birth or postpartum doula certification, any sort of certification program, that's a really cool aspect of that as well.
Yeah. If you're investing in a training, especially as competitive as doula work has gotten, I think it is important to not just look at the most popular programs, not just look at the big names. In doula work, there's 2 very big names, 3 or 4 pretty big names that everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they're bad programs, but they may not be the right fit for you. They may not be a lot of doulas, a lot of doula certification programs. Like you run a birth doula certification. I run a postpartum doula certification. A lot of certification programs run a whole gamut of different types
Both, and then
of
even
work.
more. Yeah.
And what I find is I get a lot of clients coming, not a lot of students coming in cross-training because they found that in an all-inclusive program, postpartum, which is not as exciting when you're learning about it, they felt shorted in it. And they realized now they want to move into postpartum and they don't have the skills they need.
Yeah.
So
I think that reputation is really important,
Yes.
which a lot of those big ones have a reputation. It's easier for them to get one because many people are talking about them.
Right.
Credibility is important, but also credibility and reputation also can relate back to what are their morals and ethics, and are they in alignment with you? Because there are some big certifying agencies that or companies that have some pretty not great things said about them out there. And is inclusivity important to you? Is what kind of people are they setting you up to work with? So there's another big company that is pretty much like, if they're not rich, don't worry about it. Like, don't serve them. Don't try to go after the people who don't have money. Like sliding scale, you should always get paid. Yes, you should get paid. But like the attitude behind it is
Right.
really important. And are those the people that if you go out and you look at that reputation, is that the people that you want to be related to in conversation?
Right. Well, and like you mentioned, reaching out to a training organization, checking reviews, asking people's opinions. I think also go to their website. I think websites tell you a whole lot. It tells you how much they put forward of their training. Do they list what they cover?
Right. Is there a syllabus?
Yeah. Do they list information about how the certification process works?
Yeah. Is there too much that you have to wonder about still?
Right. Do they list pricing on there? And what are the options?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I always tell people look for when you talk about a doula training's personality, and it being in alignment with what you want to offer. Do they have their book list on there?
Mm-hmm.
I know even back when I first started training as a doula, I learned so much just looking at book lists. I remember I trained as a birth doula before I trained as a postpartum doula. And I remember looking at 2 different organizations, and it was very clear that one of them was training you to work in hospitals and hospitals only. It was very medical. It was very in alignment with the standard medical practice, which is not a bad thing if that's what you want.
Right.
But if you want to take home births and birth center births and hospital births, you want somebody who's comprehensive,
Mm-hmm.
but also prepares you for more than just one style of birth.
We just had that happen, actually. Somebody reached out to us. They had reached out then after me to somebody else that has a different training program, another small one. And basically, she eventually really just wants to do out of hospital birth.
Mm-hmm.
And this other training is pretty against hospital birth. And she talked to me about that. And she was like, do you talk about out of hospital birth? I was like, yes, we have a whole section that is called out of hospital birth and a section that's hospital birth. And she's like, yeah, I just really want to serve more of the out of hospital birth. I said, okay, well, what happens if they risk out of care, at 32 weeks or 36 weeks or in labor, they transfer? Yes. And she was like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Guess who's taking our training that's coming up in a couple of weeks? That's her.
Awesome.
Because she realized that was the missing piece. Yes, I only really want to serve a certain niche, but I may end up needing to serve others. And it's really good to get a big comprehensive, outline and education about that.
Right.
You said something about your website and a book list. Oh, when we first started, we had our book list out and someone asked me, do you guys have, I have a reading disability and I need books that are on audio. Is there at least one book from each section that's available on audio? And I was like, Great question. So I went and I looked it up, and there were at least 3 sections that didn't have that. So
Right.
we added it, and we made sure we changed out for books that are, because we want people to be able to access this material in a way that makes sense to them. So, and eventually we plan to have it where even our read sections of our training have a thing at the bottom where you can push play and that page is read to you, because that's really important to us, that other people and whoever can access it.
Well, and there's a program called Speechify.
Yeah.
It's a paid program, but it will read all the words on your screen.
So
And
awesome.
it works on your laptop and on your phone. You can also go into the accessibility settings of your phone and do text to speech.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure about Android because I don't have an Android and I haven't quite found the information yet. But I know exactly how to do it on iPhone. And you can actually pick who the reader is. And with the latest updates, they've improved it so much
Awesome.
that it sounds like an audiobook.
I love that. That's so cool.
There are options, but yes, I don't have mine marked what all is available on audiobook, but I've had several students come through who have different learning, needs. And like I'm dyslexic, but I don't have much problem reading silently. I've had other students who, because dyslexia is so different for so many people, that they really struggle with that. And so we've done some research on what is accessible on audiobook, and that's important.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the list, like I have a list of modules of what we covered, looking at the curriculum. That tells you a lot about the personality of the training. If you are looking for something that is really just a Christian-based training, that you're going to be looking for something very different than if you are looking for something that's very inclusive. So you get a good feel for it when you look over the modules. You get a good feel for it when you look over the book list. And like you mentioned early, I really encourage you to reach out. If you've got any questions, if you're not at all sure it's a good fit for you, reach out. If it takes more than 3 days for somebody to reach back to you, that tells you a lot about what is it going to be like when you have a problem as a student.
Yes, absolutely. Every time I reply to someone's email that was doing our online program, they're like, wow, thanks for getting back to me so fast. And I'm like, that should be the norm. You should not have to thank me for getting
But
back
it's
to you so fast. You
not,
invested in my program.
Especially if you're looking at a program that has thousands and thousands of students. It is something that a lot of people worry about looking at smaller programs.
Yeah.
And I think there are pros and cons to it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more pros than there are
I
cons,
do too.
as long as it fits you.
Yeah, there's a couple other things. So you mentioned, like, do they have their costs listed on the website? We talked a little bit about in-person versus online, and do they have those options?
Yes.
But associated with cost also is, yes, that's the upfront cost. Are there any ongoing costs?
Yes.
So both of our programs, you don't have to continue to pay to keep your certification. But there are programs that do. They're either yearly or every 3 years or whatever. You have to recertify. What does that mean to recertify with them? And something that, for me, I'm like, if I graduated with a degree from college, what if I had to pay every couple of years to keep my degree? Like, no way, I earned that thing. And I kind of feel like that with these certification programs that require, but they're processing the information that you're sending in, making sure that you've done all of the recertifying documents. So is that something that's going to be cost prohibitive to you down the line and make it so that this is not accessible and you're maybe going to lose your certification? That's another thing to consider.
And I think that goes into style of training too. There are trainings that do 2-day workshops and say, okay, you're good, especially for cross training. If you're already certified in something else, there are some programs that have really shortened down their program in order to help you get a certification. Yeah. I get a lot of requests for that because there are the employer benefit programs. It's not actually insurance, but it kind of pays similarly. It reimburses clients what they pay you. And they require a certification. And so there's a lot of people going from one part of the field of working in birth work and deciding they need to actually get certified. And so I get a lot of inquiries of, well, if I'm already trained in something else, or I'm already certified with somebody else, and I need a different certification, can you get me through it fast? And what I tell them is, I'm not willing to cut down my program,
Same.
but I will let you use clients you're already working with or
Right.
books you've already read, but I'm not willing to water it down. So
Yes.
look at what the style of training is. Is it really comprehensive in that moment? If it's a workshop, is it just the workshop, or is it like both of our programs are hybrid programs?
Well, actually, ours is all online, and then
so is mine. But if you
or
do a
all in
workshop,
person. All of it is in person. We do all 12 modules in
okay.
person, but the certification process is the same. Whether it's you still have to do the certification process afterward.
Well, I guess that's kind of what I mean. Do you walk out of a workshop done? And if so, is that enough?
Right.
My program is all online, or you can do a workshop and then finish the certification online. And you're a trained doula, because doula work is non-regulated.
Right.
You don't have to be trained. You don't have to be certified.
Yeah.
Even though I offer a certification program, I have kind of beliefs about whether or not you need that piece of paper. I feel really strongly about training.
Same.
Because I think if you go into a field and say you're a professional at it, you really need to know what you're doing.
We have quite a few people we knew when they started with us that they were choosing to train with us, but they didn't care about certifying. Yes. That's totally fine for them. They're still a trained doula. Another thing to really think about too is, like, with our programs, the people who wrote the program are the people who are teaching it. Whereas in some companies, they have doula trainers. Like, I could go apply to be a doula trainer with another company, and they could give me their stuff and I go teach it. But there are going to be differences in those workshops depending on who your trainer is. And I can think of two off of the top of my head. And there is a wide range of information you're getting at those and style of teaching in those. And like Samantha, the company that she trained with, her trainer is completely different than other people that we know. And some of them are not as good as others.
Big companies.
Right.
There are a few companies that bring in trainers that they all are required to teach the same curriculum. And there are some variations in how different instructors approach it, but at least it keeps it somewhat in line. A couple of them, they train their trainers, but then they don't have a set curriculum. So it is truly a very different training, depending on who your trainer is.
Someone asked me one time, they're like, are you going to end up having, or no, they said, one day you're going to end up just having people that go out and teach your program. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, this is our program. Like, I wouldn't trust that someone else is going to go out there and represent me in that same way. But I also always said, I'll never have, people working in my agency. It's me. And then I have other people working, but I just feel like that's different. If we're training somebody up, I feel like it has to be us.
I am at the point where I go back and forth on it. I'm doing 6 in-person trainings this year in different cities across the country.
So cool. I'm so excited
it's
for you
very
about
cool.
That. It's so cool.
But I realized very quickly I am maxed out at 6.
Yeah. Right.
And so I have thought about, if I choose to bring on somebody else to help do in-person workshops, what would that look like? How do you keep that consistency? And it's not something I haven't totally worked it out in my head yet, but I do think consistency is a huge thing. And it's one of those questions when you call, ask somebody, let them explain to you what their process is and what their thought about it is. And if they don't have that information, that's a problem.
Price for some people, for example, we have somebody that I just talked to today, and they trained in 2022 with another actually Austin-based program. And it was fine, but they still don't feel like they're being very successful. And they want to take our training, and it's way more expensive than the one that they took. And I said, I know that this is, because they were like talking about cost. I said, I know that this is a bit more expensive. And she goes, yeah, but I've just realized you get what you pay for. And I was like, well, I'm glad you realize that, because some people don't. But also, I'm willing to hop on the phone and have a conversation with her about that. I'm willing to talk about payment plans that work for individuals. And also, the conversations on the phone, you're not going to get that in a bigger agency or a bigger company, most likely. But there are a couple of people I've had 3-4 phone calls with before they decide to sign up. And sometimes they won't sign up, and that's okay. We're not for everyone, just like every program is not for everyone.
Well,
and I think it's good that there are different ones.
Represent you. And so the ones who are not in alignment with you, well, as a trainer, we all want to make money. It's a business.
Sure.
But we also want thriving students and graduates who represent our trainings really well.
Yes.
So
you and I talked about that the other day on a phone call. We're like, sometimes we're nervous to let certain people in because we don't think that it's probably going to be a great fit out in the community afterward, them saying, I'm a Birth Baby Academy doula, or I'm an ABG doula.
Yes. And we don't have 100% control over that.
Or any.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm kind of looking over my notes and making sure that I know everything.
I think the only thing we haven't, we touched on but didn't go into is accreditation. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you think about
accreditation?
We all do.
Accreditation is one of those words that is thrown around a lot in the last 5 years, especially. And I think that's largely because there's so much more competition in doula trainings. When we're looking at colleges or community colleges, or even like going to school to be an auto mechanic, accreditation is a big thing. The reason why it's a big thing is because they are regulated fields that have set standards based on that regulation. So accreditation actually means that a company or school has brought in a third party to evaluate their educational program and certify that it meets the educational standards of that field. Doula work is non-regulated.
Who's going to do that? Who do we trust to do that?
Well, not only that, but where are those standards coming from?
Right.
Are we basing it on, not to throw other companies' names around, DONA?
Sure. It's one of the big ones.
I mentioned DONA specifically because DONA did a fabulous job for doula work. They were one of the first really well-organized, big training organizations, and they're still around. And I give them total credit for what they did for the doula field. They're not the best fit for everyone. They're not always looked at as the best training. Some people adore them, some people don't. And that's the way it is with most trainings, right?
Yeah.
But when people look at things like accreditation, they tend to look at who has been around the longest, and that's the goal. Well, I can tell you for my training, that's not the goal. My standards are not the same standards as theirs. There are many things that I set my standards higher than theirs.
And also you're less restrictive than them in some things.
Yes.
On things that we don't think should be restricted.
Yes.
So it's a balance. It's just different.
The certification process. One of the things that comes up often for me is, in my program, is people saying, well, when I work with, do I have to work with clients to be certified? And I say, yes, you do. Because I want you to work with clients while you're still in a training program, so that if you have questions, I'm there to help walk you through it. And you have that experience before I say, yes, you're good. Okay. But they ask, do I need to get them to fill out paperwork? I've heard it's really hard to get clients to fill out a review. And as somebody who runs a doula business, I can tell you, it's often hard to get clients to fill out a review. They're brand new parents. They're overwhelmed. They're stressed. You are not their priority.
Right.
Their baby.
And also it feels really yucky to have to ask them for those. We have that too, but we have other options for who can fill that out instead of the parents.
Well, and mine is set up as a fully self-evaluation.
Yep.
And it's just how I chose to do it. But like, that's one of the differences between DONA and ABG is for their birth doula stuff, doctors have to fill out their evaluation. For their postpartum doula stuff, parents have to fill out their evaluation. It's not a right or wrong. It's a different approach to it. So, but as far as accreditation goes, that is part of the problem. If you have a non-regulated field, which means you have no set standards in place as an umbrella, accreditation is just something you pay somebody to check off on a piece of paper.
And this type of work is very hard to regulate in any way because this is heart and relationship work. Yes. There's no, like, a psychologist has certain things, like they're bound by a board and all of these things. Right. And people kind of want to put doula work in that box, but it's nearly impossible. It's like a coach, yes. There are life coaches and, there's anybody can say I joke with people all the time. Like, you can say you're a doula right now if you want to, but you know what? You're not. The reason it doesn't bother me is because you're not going to get work and be successful if you weren't trained well anyway. So that's not on me. That's on them. Oh, that is something we didn't mention. That's one of the other things. How much does your program that you're looking into, do they prepare you for going off and starting this work on your own if you don't want to work for an agency? Back to
where we started this conversation and all the comments in the Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Of, okay, I'm certified. How do I find clients?
Yeah. Or how do I start a business?
How do you get a contract?
Do I need an LLC?
Yeah.
Like all of these questions. Yes. Yeah. And then you have to go buy another program to learn that stuff. Right. And that's something that's unique about my and your programs is that we do talk about the business end of things, working for an agency, what kind of questions you should ask if you're going to work for an agency, what's it like to work on your own. That's really important.
It's really important. What I tell people all the time is you can be a fabulous doula, but if you don't know how to market or run a business, that doesn't matter. Nobody knows who you are. Whether you're doing doula work just because it's your passion and you want to help people, or whether you're doing it to support your family. And I think it's really important to know you can support a family doing this work.
Yeah.
I raised 4 kids as a single parent doing it, but whether it's passion or income, you have to know how to run it as a business in order to be sustainable.
And I'm going to throw Jess under the bus again because she would love it. She's always like, I'm never working for myself. I am terrible at paperwork. I am really good at loving on families. And you just have to be real with yourself. Like, you have to know whether or not you're going to be like, can I do that? Can I keep up with the paperwork and all of those things? And she's like, sure, if I tried real hard, could I? But I don't want to. And then,
She's totally
you move
intelligent enough. We know she could.
For sure.
But the key to being self-employed is to be able to decide what works for you.
Yes.
And decide what you want to do. And in most states, as a doula, you work as a contractor. That's not true across the board. But in most states, you work as a contractor, which means you are self-employed.
Yep. And even if you didn't want to be.
Right. And so your training should teach you, what are the benefits of working independently and what are the responsibilities? What are the benefits of working in an agency? And still, what are the responsibilities? Because as a contractor, you work in an agency, you don't have to find your clients. You don't have to build your own contracts or do your own billing. You do have to figure out how you file your taxes as self-employed because everything the agency pays you is still self-employed employment because you're a contractor. All of that should be
expenses. I have people that are like, how do I know? Or like, do I need a separate bank account? I'm like,
what can you write off?
Yeah, I hate that your program didn't help you with this.
Yeah. And we see that a lot.
Yeah.
Or people who get their first tax bill, they work as a doula and maybe they're successful right off the bat. Maybe it's their 3rd or 4th or 5th year being a doula and they finally made enough money. They felt like they're successful. And then they do their taxes and they're like, and it's like, I tell people, I'm not a CPA. I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm totally dyslexic. You don't want me messing with your books. I have somebody else that does mine, but I still feel like in the training, it's important to tell people Check with your CPA, but as a general rule, these are things you can write off as self-employed as a doula. Mm-hmm. These are some of the things you need to do.
Yep.
If you're going to write off mileage, you have to have a home office.
Right. There's so many things that they don't.
Little things, but they make you sustainable as a business.
Yeah.
One of the things, and this is not in my choosing how to choose a doula thing, which I think we should do a quick summary on just the headings of it before we log off here.
Yeah.
But one of the things I talk to doulas about all the time is how do you set healthy boundaries as a doula? Because we have that
this
too.
This
is a heart-centered business.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody goes into doula work just to make money. They like making money, but they're drawn to it because of the heart-centered part of it.
Yeah.
Heart-centered givers often have hard times with boundaries.
Yes. That's so true. It's very difficult to do a business transaction and then love on somebody. Like it's just pretty incongruent. Yes. It can be difficult.
Or charge them for it in general.
Right. Yeah. Because we want to just have it. We want everyone to be able to have it. So, all right. So we had choosing a doula training program, reaching out to them, looking at their website, seeing what type of support or mentorship they have afterward. Absolutely. What are their styles or methods of training? How much does it cost? And are there ongoing costs?
Yep.
What did I miss? Did I miss anything?
I think in terms of looking at the website, looking at the book list, and this is also reaching out to them, the biggest part to me is, does it fit for you? Does it feel in alignment with how you want to work?
Yes, I agree. So. Thank you so much, Allison. This is really fun to do with you, especially. And we'll have to have you come back another time to talk about other stuff.
I would love to do that.
Thanks, y'all.
Ciarra.
Thank you for joining us on Birth, Baby. Thanks again to Longing for Orpheus for our music. You can look him up on Spotify. Remember to leave a review, share, and follow wherever you get your podcasts. See you next week.